Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV, and hello to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. We are so happy to have you here. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is The Business Talk Show. My co-host and friend and partner, he's been going all week. He did a whole launch party show with me on Monday, just 2 days ago, and he's back every week with me for The Business Talk Show. Let's welcome him, Mr. Cini. Welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back, Dr. Jacalyn, and I love the new look, the USA Global TV branding, and congratulations on a really terrific launch event the other day. It was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being such a big part of it. Everybody just loves Mr. Cini and wants to be on the stage at the same time that you are. You always do a fantastic job bringing out the best in everyone. So as I've said many times, I'm so grateful for you being on this journey with me from the very beginning, from a conversation that took place in a parking lot about real estate to where we are today.
I know, a little different.
A little, yes. And I also want to give a shout out to Daphne DeLucci and Stephen Gillen from Roar Media Creative for all of the beautiful branding that you see, and for our new websites, usaglobaltv.com and drjacalyn.com. I don't know if it's been launched yet or not, because I've been here. It's my 5th show today. And I'm really excited because we've got a great guest backstage. But before we bring her out, I'm going to spotlight you, Al, and I want you to tell everybody about all the wonderful things you're doing with your business, because it's really relevant, has a nice tie to our guest.
It does tie in beautifully. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. I appreciate that. We, first of all, Daphne and Stephen are where we met today's guests. We want to shout out to them for making this introduction. When we bring Kim out a little bit, she'll be talking about leadership, and that's her sweet spot as a coach. What we do with the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit is we try to bring out the leadership qualities in everybody on a team. What we found in our research is that people really don't follow people. What they follow is what people follow. And in other words, if you as a leader love something, that love is communicable. And when the other people on your team or in your company fall in love with what you love, there's no stopping them in helping you achieve whatever that is. And unlocking that potential inside of people, I think, is key. I'm sure Kim is going to talk about that, but that's what we do with the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit. Al.Cini at getbcat.com. And thank you, Dr. Jacalyn, for the chance to talk about it.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And Al, you know, you and I have that in common in our background. I worked in the corporate world up until, what year was it? Was it last year? I think it was. But I was in employee recognition, sales incentives, and really, how do you drive a culture of engagement? I did that for 20 some years. It's important, especially today with all the changes and remote working and people leaving the corporate world to go out on their own or just take a break and spend some time with their families and figuring out what's the next chapter of life for them.
And it'll be great to hear what Kim has to say about how you get into 2022 as a leader, because things are not the same as they were in 2021 and 2020.
It's so true. Let's bring her out. Our guest is Adele Randall, and she is a renowned coach and author. She joins us right now. Hi, Kim.
Hey, Kim.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. We love what you're doing, and you're so experienced. We were talking backstage. You're on your 5th book. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I wrote my first one literally it was co-authored, my first one. And it came about on the very first day of lockdown. So somebody rang me up and said, you've ran remote teams, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, for about 20 years. And they said, we're going to write a book to help people to manage a remote team. Can you be part of it? And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never really written anything apart from like maybe a shopping list. So I'm not sure it's really for me. And he was like, oh, go on, give it a try. So, in the realms of try anything once, I was like, go on, then I will do. And he was like, you've got a week. So I'm sorry, you've got a week. So I had to write my chapter in the first week. We went to publish on day 10 of lockdown, and by day 12, we were international bestsellers.
Whoa.
And that started what
That
was
is
a
pretty
journey
amazing.
of writing another 4 books that were all designed to help people in the current climate. So, how do we adapt and develop and evolve to the way that the world's evolving around us? I'd had a nearly 30-year career in corporate life before deciding, following a third potentially life-threatening illness, that I needed to do something slightly different. I was single mum to a 3-year-old and ended up in intensive care. And for the third time, I was like, I think you need to do something different. So I vowed that if I got out, I would quit my job, I would retrain, and I would spend my time helping other leaders and other organizations to better connect with their people, to create a culture that allows people to thrive. And I guess that was nearly 3 years ago. I've been doing it ever since. My little girl is now a happy, thriving 5-year-old who keeps me on my toes.
It's so interesting, and thank you for your transparency. It's so interesting that you shared your body was basically calling out to you to do something different. And I had this similar thing happen to me, but we don't listen the first time. We don't even listen the second time. Finally, we're like in a dire situation. It's like, hello, maybe we should be doing something different. So you walk down a different path, and how has your life changed since then?
Oh, it's changed tremendously. I can't even fathom the life that I had before. So, I was very fortunate. I actually had an MVQ in hairdressing. So I left school to be a hairdresser. I haven't got a degree. I haven't got any A-levels. But I made my way up to the board rooms of the FTSE 250. All the time thinking someone was going to turn around and go, you've put the hairdresser on the board. That's really awkward. Get her off. And they never did it, but I was very nervous about it. I always felt that I shouldn't really be where I was. And it wasn't until, again, it was my little girl. She has been my absolute North Star. But having had one particular illness, I remember having to write the letter to her in case I didn't make it, because I wasn't certain I was going to make it. And I didn't know where to write that letter. I didn't know where to start. So I crept upstairs into a room and watched her happily asleep, snoring away, dreaming about a day. And it hit me in that moment that the voice we talk to ourselves becomes the voice we teach our children to talk to themselves. And the world stopped, or at least my heart did, because I have not been very nice to myself for nearly 50 years. And I didn't want that to be the legacy I left her. I didn't want to be the one that created that voice in her head. So I vowed that I would come out and I would learn how to change that voice in my head and how to actually get to a place where I could actually like myself, maybe even get past liking myself. But I'd have to work on trying to work out what it was that meant that I was worthwhile as a human being. And it's been a massive journey. And I never thought I would end up on shows, sharing my story, or stages, talking to people. And yet I do that now for a living, on the off chance that sharing my story, sharing just what it's like to go through that lack of care and consideration for you as a human being and turn that around might actually help other people to get out of their own way, overcome their fear, and build that brave belief to go out there and do something different.
Wow. Kim, that's really, you use an awful lot of yourself in your work, obviously. And I guess what I kind of want to ask is, I know you're a leadership coach. We want to connect you with people out there who might want to get to know you as a leadership coach. How much of your personal journey informs your coaching for your clients?
Quite a lot, in that I guess what I realise now, one of my greatest skills came from being a hairdresser rather than despite being a hairdresser. So I spent years desperately hoping nobody would ever find out I was a hairdresser, really. And then realised one of the greatest gifts that they teach you as a hairdresser is to listen to somebody, to understand what it is that's important to them, and then to do your best to leave them feeling the best version of themselves. Well, that's what I do in coaching. I listen to understand what's really important to my client, and then help them to achieve that dream, help them to see where they've got blind spots. Because the challenge for all of us is we all have blind spots, and we're blind to them for a reason. We can't see them.
Yeah.
And I had somebody once say to me, oh, you're a coach, so you think you're better than the rest of us? And I was like, no. If you think about every top athlete, every top politician, every top business person, they've got a coach. If the coach were actually better than they were, it'd be their name we knew. The point of having the coach is that they can stand in your blind spot and shine a light so that you can get out of your own way. And that's why, you know, I am a coach. I have a coach because I've got blind spots too. And if I want to be the best I can for my clients and to add real value every time, I need to make sure that I'm shining a light on my own blind spots and doing something to develop them.
Kim, I love so much of what you shared, and especially the part about not wanting people to know that you were a hairdresser. When you said you were a hairdresser, the first thing I thought to myself was, over the course of the years, the number of people who've done my hair, and I felt like they were a therapist. I felt like they were someone safe for me to talk to. And sometimes I even felt badly because I'm blithering on and on and on. I know they're trying to do their work. It's like, why won't I just stop talking? So I really have so much respect for them, because you know, what you did is exactly what you said. You were a safe place for somebody to share, and you transformed them to look and feel beautiful. So it leads me to this day that you started, that you founded, about imposter syndrome. So it sounds like you felt like an imposter when you were on the board.
Oh, massively. I literally spent years thinking that I'd get found out, that I shouldn't be there, that I didn't deserve it. And when you're in the throes of imposter syndrome, it's terrifying. You have this ridiculous, now I talk about it, I find it a bit embarrassing, but you have this constant conversation in your head going, well, they're just going to find you out. Clearly you're hopeless and you don't know what you're doing. But at the same time, you're trying not to say that out loud because you're desperately trying not to get found out. And it didn't matter what awards I won. It didn't matter what accolades I got. It didn't matter how stellar my career had ended up being. I still thought, if only they knew, if only they found out that I actually am hopeless and don't know what I'm talking about, then I will be shuttered out and I will be back where I started. And I had as I say, nearly 30-year career in corporate life. And I was really fortunate over the years to be taken to other organizations by previous bosses. But even that couldn't dent my belief that I was actually hopeless, that I didn't know what I was talking about and that I was going to get found out. And as I say, when I realized that that could be what I was going to leave as a legacy for my daughter, I had to change. I had to make sure that that isn't what it was. So I started what was nearly 5 years of research into, why do we do this? And actually, am I on my own? Is it just me that's a crazy person that doubts themselves? And what I identified was that imposter syndrome affects probably 70% of the global population at some point in their life. And we love a label, so we feel like an imposter, we feel like a fraud. But actually, I think it's possibly more the symptom of being an insecure overachiever, because you only start to suffer with that imposter syndrome at the point you've achieved something you didn't think you should. And so I started to look at, okay, how do we get over it? And one of the first ways of getting over it is to admit it. Because when you're in the throes of it, the last thing on earth you want is for anybody to find you out. So the one thing you're never going to do is tell anybody that you are suffering with it. So the first thing is to get it out. But then having my little girl really helped me understand the other parts of it, because it helped me realize that actually it comes down to our belief. And if we can borrow people's belief until we find our own, we can overcome all kinds of obstacles. Because if you think about it, if I would say to anybody watching this, or to you guys, that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're going to have to learn how to walk or talk or run or jump or skip, you'd be overwhelmed. We would all be overwhelmed. And yet the reality is, at our most vulnerable, we already learned how to do that. So why is it that we can take on something that would daunt us today when we were so vulnerable? And I think it comes down to three things. The first is, we're human beings, we're social animals. We want to be the same. We want to fit in. So you can walk and talk and run and jump, so I want to. The second one is, we don't really know how to say no and mean it. even a toddler tantrum runs out of steam eventually, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time. And the third, and perhaps for me the most important, is I've yet to see a child trying to walk that doesn't have at least one adult nearby going, come on, you've got this. You're so close, you can do it. So we quite literally give them our belief. And so I started looking at that in the wider context of work and realized that every time somebody gives you an opportunity, every time somebody offers you a piece of work, also as human beings, we don't want to be foolish. So we're not going to offer you the piece of work if we think you're going to mess up, because we're going to look foolish for having entrusted you with that piece of work. But if we started to really obviously lend our belief, tell people, I'm offering you this piece of work because you are brilliant at this, this, and this, and I believe you can do it. And what we allow people to do is borrow our belief until they find their own. And I realized, looking back over my life, that inadvertently, that's what I'd been doing for decades. I'd been borrowing other people's belief. When they said I could do it, and I thought, I can't. But you believe I can, and I don't want to let you down, so I'm going to do my best not to let you down. That is how I went from starting out as a cashier to getting my first director role in my early 30s. It was because I didn't want to let people down who believed in me. And I guess it was that other element that said, I suddenly realized that inadvertently I was making my opinion more important than the people that I really valued and respected. And that made absolutely no sense to me. So let me explain what I mean by that. Is I won Leader of the Year. I won all kinds of accolades. I'd got offers of promotions, been taken to other organisations. And all the time, even though these were people that I respected and admired, I would go, if only they knew. But what that meant was I was suggesting that my opinion that I was rubbish was more important than their opinion that I was really good. Well, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe my opinion was better than anybody else's. I didn't actually think my opinion was very valid at all. So why was it that I was so convinced my opinion I was rubbish was worth believing in more than their opinion that I was good? And so now what I do is I proactively borrow their opinion. So you think I'm good at this? I'm going to trust you that I am good at it. And I'm just going to do my level best to not let you down. But you can actually now start to do that. So I work with leaders all of the time on how do they better connect with their people. As we know, we're in a massive race to win talent, to keep talent. So attracting and retaining talent is critical to our success. And actually, that's what my next book is about. So it's called Authentic Achievements, and it's the 7 secrets to building brave belief, unstoppable sales, and turning your leaders into talent magnets for guaranteed sustainable growth. Because at the point that we connect with people, we connect with that talent and we create that community, then we are guaranteed that success. And I've seen it work for decades with hundreds of organizations, and now wanted to share it. And as you said, Alex, it's that part around, if we've got that belief, we've got that vision, if we've got something that is important and passionate to us, that's what connects us with people. People connect with purpose, they connect with values, and they connect with community. And I think they're the critical skills that we need to educate our leaders on, because they aren't things that we've ever been taught. And when I went on leadership courses, they'd teach you Maslow's hierarchy of needs, useful, but not helpful when it comes to actually communicating with the people that I want to have work for me and setting a sense of direction. It's like, actually, you've got to connect on that human level. And that means sharing some vulnerability without losing your credibility. And that's a very scary space for anybody who's been in the corporate world that spent the last 30 plus years being told, whatever happens, don't share any vulnerability. Because that will be when you become irrelevant. And what we're now seeing is it's people that can connect with that vulnerability whilst maintaining their credibility that are winning the race for talent.
Well, Kim, you're shining a light on one of my favorite leadership blind spots. A lot of leaders feel that everybody's watching them and they have to be perfect. And if they make any mistakes, everything is going to go wrong, and that they can't recover from any mistakes at all. So as a result, they live in fear pretty much perpetually. They actually avoid talking to the people who work for them because they don't want to get put in situations that they'll find uncomfortable or awkward. How do you help somebody with that kind of a blind spot?
You're so right. It's such a common one. We have that fear of becoming irrelevant, of the fact that, if we aren't perfect, if we don't know everything, if we don't have the answer to everything, and people are going to go, oh, well, I'm not following her anymore. She's clearly hopeless. But actually learning to get comfortable with the unknown, being able to share with people. I remember going into one organization, and I think it was on day 2, and I had to stand up in this big conference, and one of the people put their hand up and asked a particular question. I can't remember what it was. And I said to them, I'm really sorry. I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm more than happy to give you my opinion, because I don't want you thinking I'm avoiding the question, but it will just be my opinion. Then I will go away and I will find the answer, and I will come back and we'll learn together. And they just all looked at me. And somebody said afterwards, you were really comfortable with that. And I said, well, what's the worst that can happen? We chase perfection, and yet nobody's perfect. We are perfectly imperfect as human beings. And once we embrace our imperfection, then what that allows other people to do is embrace their imperfection. And therefore, we're all being much more honest, because we can go, look, we make mistakes. I'm human. I remember being COO for one organization and going to chat to somebody who was on the phone. And I sat down next to him, find out how things were going, what it was like to be him, what were the stupid things that we did, that he was like, really, why do you do this? Because you'll be amazed what your people know that is ridiculous, that is going on in your organization today. And they don't tell you because they think you know. And when you hear it, you're like, why on earth are we doing that? Just stop it. So going and asking them, spending time at their desk saying, tell me what you would change. If you were me, what would you change? What's it feel like to be here? And how can I help you be the best you can be? They'll follow you, because actually at our base, human beings want to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected. As a leader, if you can provide that for your people, you'll be amazed what they can do for you. And that doesn't mean to say you never disagree, but you just never disrespect. And I think it's helping leaders get to that place of saying, do you listen to understand, or do you listen to interject? A lot of leaders, because they're fearful of not knowing all the answers, of not appearing to be perfect, they've stopped listening to understand the other person's point of view. They listen purely to get their next point across. Well, that's a very one-sided conversation that nobody wants to stay part of. And the statistics speak for themselves. I think it's 57% of people leave their boss, not the organisation. More than 1 in 2. So every time talent leaves, they're leaving you. And everybody knows that. So the board knows that, the leadership team knows that. That, in my opinion, is significantly more scary than having to turn around to somebody and say, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let's find it together and let's go on a learning journey. So I think it's giving people those baby steps first, of saying, what's the worst that could happen if somebody knew that you didn't know all of the answers? If somebody realised that you are actually perfectly imperfect. Back to the guy that I went and sat with, I sat next to him and he was like, I can't talk to you. I was like, why not? And he's like, well, you're like really important. I was like, it's so ridiculous. I'm just a person. And yes, I've got a job to do. And if I get my job wrong, we've got a problem. But you've got a job to do. And if you get your job wrong, we've got a problem. And last time I checked, you cut me, I bleed. I'm pretty certain if I cut you, you'd bleed. Please don't tell HR I threatened to cut you. And at which point he just laughed and he was like, you're like really normal, aren't you? And I was like, to be fair, I've always thought if you can just bring your whole self to work, then people stop worrying. One of the biggest challenges I see in leaders the globe over is they're not being themselves. They're not being authentic. And therefore, what happens is instead of their people listening to what they've got to say, they're looking for what doesn't feel right, what doesn't fit. Something about what you're saying and what you're doing doesn't marry up. So I'm no longer listening to you. I'm trying to identify what's not right here. Because as human beings, we want things to be right. If there's a gap, then the way neuroscientifically, the way that we're set up is we start to fill the gap. So in the absence of a fact, we create a story. So one of the things I found was when I got comfortable, and it took me a lot of years, when I got comfortable to just be me, then I became significantly more successful because people got what they saw on the tin. I used to joke that I'd got hairdresser face. People will literally tell me anything. Sometimes things I don't want to know. And they're going, okay, you can stop now, thank you. But but I think it was just because I'm genuinely interested. That, you know, they laugh over here that on the tube in London, nobody talks to you. People talk to me. People will tell me anything. But I think that's because I genuinely am interested in what they've got to say and where they're going. But my massive breakthrough was probably about 15 years ago. And I remember going for a job. It was head of sales for the UK for a big accounting software company. And everybody for years that I'd worked with had had such gravitas. They were so well polished and well pulled together. And I'm like a hyperactive puppy dog most of the time. And I was thinking, oh, I really don't fit in, you know, this corporate structure. I'm not really what they're looking for. And I went for this interview and thought, you know what, this job's big. And if I get it, it's going to take all of my effort to do the job and do it well without trying to be something I'm not. So I'm going to go into that interview and I'm going to be exactly who I am. And we got to the end of the interview, group HR director turned around and said, so Kim, if you had to sum yourself up in a word, what would it be? And I said, oh, loud. And she looked aghast. And she was like, I'm sorry, loud. And I said, well, you've known me for what, 50 minutes? And she went, yeah. I said, do you think I'm loud? She was like, well, yeah. I said, great. In that case, it's self-aware and it's honest. I'll stick with it. And she said, that's what got you the job. She said, because you were just comfortably you. And I was like, yeah, because actually it took a long time to be comfortably me. It took a long time of going, people might not like me. Well, they might not, but as long as everything I'm doing from a position of trying to be kind and trying to leave things better than I found them and trying to be honest, there's no more I can do, because people don't respond to what's happening. They respond to what they've made it mean. That really is about what's going off in their world. You've got to go at it from what is it you mean? How do you show up? And how do you be your most authentic self? And I love a quote, and I saw one a few years ago, which I adore, which is, I'd rather be somebody's shot of whiskey than everybody's cup of tea. Right. And as a British person, I tried to be everybody's cup of tea for years. We could argue about how we take tea as easily as we could argue about politics and religion. You were just never, ever going to win that battle. So being somebody's shot of whiskey means for the right people, I will add real value to them. And for the wrong people, I'm just not meant for them. And that's absolutely fine for them and for me. It's a very empowering place. And I think if we can, I guess one of the things I try and do with my clients and have been very successful in doing is get them to be comfortable with that. That says, actually, leadership is not a popularity contest. It's about being honest. It's about being fair. And it's about being kind and courageous. You can't have one without the other. We often talk about kindness, but we don't talk about the fact that it has to come with courage. Unfortunately, in my career, I've had to run 7 major redundancy programs. And you have to be courageous to do that, because it's the worst thing that you can do to somebody's life. But it's then being authentic and being honest with it. I remember standing up in front of the room of people when I first went into the first one and said, the first thing I need you to understand is that this is not about you. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's happening to you. You are impacted as a result of this. The reason I say it's not about you is you are not facing redundancy because you're not an amazing employee, because you aren't somebody that I would love to have in my team for the rest of my life. You're facing redundancy because I couldn't lead us to a better outcome. The organisation cannot survive unless we cut costs. And it's because of that I'm stood in front of you today and you're facing redundancy. And I'm not telling you that because I want you to dislike me. I'm telling you that because you deserve to know the truth, and you deserve to make sure that you don't take a belief that it's because you're not good enough into your future, because you will make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I want to turn the organisation around, and I want you to come back and work for me. And I can only do that if you don't get dented by the process. And it is in that piece around saying, do you know, did people love me that day? No, probably not. I had one lady who was effing and jeffing, quite rightly, frustrated as anything. It was not long before Christmas. And she came up to me at the end and she was like, I'm really sorry. I said, please don't be sorry. I delivered the most horrendous message to you today. And you were absolutely justified in being angry and being upset, because we led you into this space. I wish I could have led it differently. Now, I could have sat there and gone, to be fair, I was on day 10 in the organisation. It wasn't really me that did it. But that's not what they needed to hear. They needed to look somebody in the eye that had made that decision and have somebody take accountability for what went wrong. Those people are still connected with me today and still put me forward for other organizations and recommend me to speak, because they said she was authentic even in the most challenging of situations. And I think once we learn that as leaders, we really are unstoppable.
Well, Kim, listen, while you're, first of all, I resonate completely with everything you say, and that most managers get in trouble because they're not authentic, because they're reading a script when they talk to people and they're not being who they are.
Yeah.
And I guess my question to you is the big question. Why do corporations do such a consistently lousy job training managers how to manage?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it is because we lead the way we've been led. So the people at the top of the organization have been led badly, and therefore they possibly don't realize that what they're now doing is teaching the next generation to lead badly as well. And the other thing that we do is we confuse ourselves with the labels. In fact, I was having a conversation about this just yesterday, and people were like, well, I've got so many different people that, so many different challenges that I'm facing. And I said, but when it comes down to it, the only thing we have to bear in mind in life or in business is people. It doesn't matter what label we put on it. We talk about customers, they're people; colleagues, they're people; leaders, they're people; business partners, they're people; shareholders, they're people. So if we realize that, take all of those labels away, what we're saying is, I'm dealing with another human being. I'm going to seek to understand what's important to them and how can I help them to achieve it. Right. And if I do that in every situation, then actually it all becomes a lot easier. But we overcomplicate it. And corporations have been doing this, unfortunately, for decades, which is we create hierarchy, we label everything to within an inch of its life, and then we give people a lot of theories, or we send them on a course and then go, well, I sent you on a course like it's the cure for cancer. Well, hold on. Did you ask them about what they wanted to get from the course? Were you honest with them about where you see them get in their own way? Were you vulnerable enough to ask them what you could do differently to lead them better? Because until we start asking those questions at the top of the tree, it's never going to permeate throughout.
I want to ask you a question because this actually connects people with what you do for a living. A corporation that is having difficulty with turnover, because as you say, most people quit their manager, not their company, right? Could they call you in for a workshop with their managers to help them connect more effectively with people? Is that one of the things you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a few things. So one of the other things, I'm a qualified face whisperer, which freaks the living daylights out of everybody. So what that means is I can read micro expressions, and our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So by the time you think, don't show her the emotion's already out there. So one of the things I do with organizations is teach their leaders how to read the emotions on people's faces. Because when you can read them and react to them, then you can connect better emotionally. So I run courses like that. I also do quite a lot of work on board effectiveness. So going in and helping the board see who's getting on, who's not getting on, and actually how do they find a common and cohesive language? Because what you find is the fish rots from the head. So very often what is being demonstrated lower down in the organization is a direct replica of what's going on in your boardroom. And you fix that first, and the rest of it becomes so much easier.
Kim, I have a question for you, and for Al also. In my corporate career, I can remember two specific times. It still resonates with me. I was doing a huge sales pitch, millions of dollars. This is at two different companies. And I was a client of both. I was a big advocate, a brand ambassador. And during the pitch for the business, both times, years apart, at the end, when I was closing and asking for the business and why they should work with us, why they should work with me specifically, I got emotional. I actually got like little tears in my eyes because it meant so much to me to be a part of what they were doing. And I should have learned the first time because it wasn't rehearsed. It was just, but both times I got blasted for being vulnerable. And even though I had the credibility, they didn't want to see that vulnerability. They saw it as weakness. And in the organizations where I worked at the time, I was just blasted about it. So how can we be vulnerable and still be credible? And before we go to Kim, Al, I'd like to know, if you ever, in your career, have you ever gotten emotional about a pitch?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think there is a gender difference, I think. And there's difference also in gender expectations. And that's to leadership skills for women, I think in particular, because of the world they operate in and because of the gifts they bring to that role. I mean, gifts, not weaknesses, but gifts. I think society has to change what it expects of people. So there's a little bit of work that society has to do. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of what it is society expects of us. And we have to adjust every now and then, especially when we're dealing with audiences who are unfamiliar people to us, people that we don't know. Because people are really quick to judge. And it's unfortunate. Different people show passion and excitement in different ways. So the way one person might register enthusiasm could be quite different and less emotional than the way somebody else might. But you want enthusiasm, and wherever you get it, the last thing you want to do is kill it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is take the wind out of somebody's sails.
Definitely. I think I was perceived as being weak. And then Kim, over to you in 1 second. And then the second pitch, I actually brought an entire suitcase. I got on a train, I'm sorry. And I brought a suitcase of all the products that I used at this company. And I set them up on a table, beautiful display. And they thought I was desperate. That was the feedback that I got. So
that's the feedback you got.
Yeah. So vulnerability, credibility. So Kim, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think that the whole balance around vulnerability and credibility is asking a few questions about your audience first. So thinking about actually, how do they like to receive the information that you're giving them? And what, if any, are the things that they're uncomfortable with? Because then that allows you to temper things beforehand. There's a piece around personology. So this hopefully is useful to people. But if you take the pictures of somebody, so if you look at me, for example, when my eyes are open, you can't see very much of my exposed eyelid. That means I'm highly likely to be inquisitive and to ask lots of questions, which is true. If you have a picture of somebody and they've got a lot of exposed eyelid, it's highly likely that they would like you to get to the point. So just spotting those two quick things when you're dealing with people allows you to tailor how you're going to communicate things. And then some of it is around tailoring for yourself. So, I've dealt over the years, I used to get very passionate about things. And at one point I thought it was okay because I was just passionate. But what I realized is that my message could get lost because of how I was choosing to deliver it. And that was significantly more frustrating for me than actually being passionate. So I had to work really hard on how do I, to your point, how do I take that passion and channel it for good instead of letting it overtake me. And I've seen other leaders. I worked with one a few years ago, and he used to say something that would be spot on, exactly what you wanted him to say, totally on the money, but then he'd immediately come out with a sarcastic comment. So you could dismiss what he'd got to say because he was just being sarcastic. And I was like, I see your frustration. I see how cheesed off you are that your valid points are being missed. But you are creating the environment for them to be missed because you are choosing to go with the sarcastic comment. So do me a favor, for the next month, say the sarcastic comment in your head only. Don't say it out loud, and see what happens. And he went from people ignoring what he'd got to say to listening to what he'd got to say because he wasn't self-sabotaging. So I think there is, and Al and Dr. Jacalyn, you've both made brilliant points, which is, I think it's about how we help people to hone those skills so that we're not dampening that passion, we're not dampening that enthusiasm, but we're channeling it for them into a way that actually adds value to what they're going to do and doesn't detract from it. Because there's nothing more frustrating than having been in those roles. I remember probably 20 odd years ago being told that I was bright enough, but I didn't have the gravitas and I didn't have the vocabulary to go where I should go. So I went and learned all these new words. I had to have more gravitas and be more serious. And then I realized nobody understood me. because I'd talk to my people and I'd be like, oh, I've got a plethora of ideas. And they're like, what? Like, well, there's lots of ways we could do it. Or I even learned how to say I run peripatetic teams, which means I run people who work remotely. It's like, just say what it says on the tin. Stop coming out with these ludicrous words that nobody understands. But that was back down to the culture, which was to fit in, you had to go a particular way. And then I just chose to unlearn it. And I think it can be so disheartening when you've put your heart and soul into something to then almost have that thrown back at you. So I think investing the time and getting somebody who can help you channel that vulnerability into credibility, because it's a fine line, and we live in a world of polarity. For every up there's a down, for every left there's a right. So we can actually channel it, but we just need to do a bit of work to focus on that. And I think you're right, if we can really invest globally in those skills, in being able to turn the volume up on the gifts that everybody brings, men, women, all of the different diversities. Neurodiversity is a new one that we're looking to embrace. It used to be something that people were, again, well, you're not going to get anywhere because you don't think the same way as us. And now we're proactively seeking them out because they don't think the same way as us. They can see the answer to problems that we can't. And I think we've got a real drive globally to have more diversity, more inclusion, and yet despite that we've got millennia of conflict. And it all comes down, in my opinion, to three things. It's either misinformation, miscommunication, or misunderstanding. And if we can seek instead to understand the other person's point of view, then we can better understand if there is a way that we can move forward together. And the thing that connects all of us, it connects us irrelevant of our age, our race, our gender, our culture, is that we teach and we learn through stories. So I think for me, storytelling is probably one of the key skills that I help leaders with, which is how do you tell a more compelling story? And the best storytellers have the most stories. So the best way to get stories is to go out there to your people and learn theirs, understand what theirs is, because they will feel respected, listened to, and understood. And you'll learn something, and you'll have more compelling stories to tell your current talent and your future talent. But it also will help us with that diversity and inclusion.
Well, in the minutes we have left, I want to make sure that we connect you with everybody in our audience on everything that you can offer. And I know, reading your LinkedIn profile, you also do speaking. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you can be booked as a speaker for an event somebody might be planning.
Yeah, of course. So if anybody would like to book me as a speaker, I do quite a lot of speaking. You can find out all of the different things that I do at kimadelrandall.com, or just get in touch directly. Email me at hello@kimadelrandall.com, and I would love to have a conversation and see how I can better serve you, because I think that's what we're all here to do, is to leave things better than we found them and to serve people with kindness and courage.
So workshops, speaking, coaching, training, technically. I mean, all those things, things corporations can call. And you speak with such passion. It's pretty obvious you love what you do. And I know I certainly get that message from you. You mentioned really quickly that you mentioned millennials. And I did have a question in the back of my mind. There are leaders now in every generation. So we've got 35-year-old leaders, and we've got 45-year-old leaders, and we've got older leaders. Are there blind spots? I know. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about somebody else. Are their blind spots different, or are they the same? How do the generations differ with respect to their leadership?
Oh, fascinating. So I think they differ in how we have brought them up. So when we think about millennials, we've brought them up. Often people in my generation are the parents of millennials, to say, trust your value, know what you are worth, and expect that, and then give that to other people. What's fascinating is I see a lot of people my age who are then going, oh, I've got millennials to manage. Well, hold on, I mean, you've got kids at home that are millennials. Yeah. Well, what would you do if it was them telling you about their boss? Well, I'd think that they were right. Right. Well, that millennial that you're managing is like your child. So just do it in the same way. But I think for a lot, for a lot of them, their blind spots by generation are in a different space, but they all have a different blind spot. And I think it's teaching all of them to say, rather than talk about, relevant of your generation, rather than talk about what I want and what I need, start talking about what do you want and what do you need? Because as a leader, basically my job is to deliver value. If you don't see value in what I do, you won't continue to work for me. Well, then that means I've failed because I've lost talent. So I need to make sure that you're buying what I'm selling. So my job is to deliver the customer service, the colleague experience to you that I want you to go and deliver to the end customer. And if I focus on that and get you to focus on doing exactly the same, we're all going to be successful. But I think it's putting ourselves in that space that says, actually, you're my customers. As a leader, if all your people are your customers, start thinking in that way. And what would you do? You'd ask your customers what they want. You'd ask them how it's going. You'd ask them what they see next. So start doing that with your colleagues, and then you're in it together. They're not looking to you to have all of the answers. And I think this is one of the challenges for leaders all over the world, is that they think they've got to have the answers to questions they've not even asked themselves yet. And that's a terrifying place to be. It's like, I don't even know, I'm going to ask myself and you're going to ask me. Instead, if you go, all I've got to do is be comfortable to say, I don't know, but we can find out together.
So true.
Because people don't want somebody that knows everything. That means you're not willing to learn.
Right.
They want someone that's going to hold their hand and help them across whatever the challenges are that life's throwing them.
Good.
I love the way you summed that up. That's really terrific. And I think if it starts with, like, I look at myself, I'm a leader. I have a team of people, right? And I have to be asking my team, what do you think? What's going on? How does it feel? I think it applies to everyone. Because you could be a leader in your own home, you could be a leader in your community. It's the right thing to do, to look at your people as your clients, your customers. They need to be treated with kid gloves first because they're the brands. They are the front line.
Yeah, they are. They're delivering. I always look at it and say, well, I'm delivering to my people. If I deliver them a poor service, I don't do what I said I'd do when I said I'd do it, I make them feel rubbish, then how can I expect them to go and deliver an amazing service to my end clients? Because I'm not walking my talk. I'm not saying, actually, listen to your customers, ask them what's important to them. Don't assume you know what problem it is that they're trying to solve. And the other thing is to work out if it's needs or wants. So if you don't know if what you're solving is needs or wants, you're going to get it really badly wrong. So if I need a pen, any old pen will do. I just want to be able to write it down. I need something to put pen to paper. If I want a Mont Blanc, it's not about the pen, it's about the experience, it's about everything that comes with it. So when we think about our customers, and our customers, as we say, are everybody, they're our children, they're our friends, they're our colleagues, they're our clients, we start saying, actually, what is it I'm currently trying to do for you? Am I solving a need, or am I creating the chance for you to deliver a want? Am I treating your desire, or am I treating your need? Because once you understand that, you're going to much better connect with them. If all I want is a pen and somebody starts trying to give me a Mont Blanc, I'm like, hello, I just want a pen. I don't need all of that. But vice versa, the other is true. It's like, don't tell me that I could just make do with a pen. I want the experience. So really getting into the minds of who it is you're serving at the time, and going back to those three, in my opinion, the basics, which are listen to understand, and then try and create that for them. But suspend the desire to listen to interject. As I think, the other thing my nan said to me, God bless her soul, many years ago, is every day's a school day. So as a leader, embracing that and going to every day's a school day, I can learn something every single day from every person I meet, as long as I open my mind to it, makes life such an exciting journey.
So much more interesting.
Really critical.
Yeah, so true. Kim, you've been a true delight. You've shared so much with us that I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kim.
Oh, thank you both for having me. I really appreciate it.
Total pleasure for us.
You definitely have to come back. And before you leave, I just want to let everybody know, including you, in case you want to come back, you can go over to our new website, usaglobaltv.com, and click on book your session. All the bookings are taking place on usaglobaltv.com.
Perfect.
All right, Kim, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
She shared a ton of valuable content.
Very valuable content on subjects that should be common sense subjects but are just not for so many people, because leadership for too many people is a role, and they feel like they need to play that role, and they ask questions that they already know the answer to, and they evaluate the answers they hear against what they have in their heads. They judge people without realizing it, and they suck the energy out of their employees without even knowing they've done it. And the next thing you know, your best people have left, and the people you'd really rather didn't stay will, and they'll stop working. I mean, it's one thing to quit and actually leave. It's another thing to quit and stay, which a lot of employees do, especially when their leaders don't inspire them. So, I think that's such a valuable conversation to have. And Kim would be such a gift to so many corporations. I think to help them solve that.
Yes, they should absolutely reach out to her. One thing I just wanted to share is that in the corporate world and other roles as well, but especially in corporate, there's many positions, job descriptions where you're empowered. You're empowered to do X, Y, and Z. And then you go out and do X, Y, and Z, and you get your hand slapped because you stepped out of the box. Like, wait, I thought I had the power. Oh, no, it's just a short little leash there that you have.
I worked for a company once. We were solving this enormous problem for a client. It was really painful. It was a product problem. And I was the lead guy. And I remember some senior vice president said to me, whatever it takes, do whatever you have to. Just make sure that this problem gets addressed. And he said, but before you do anything, make sure you call me. It was his last sentence. Before you do anything, make sure you check with me first. Yeah, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
You know what? And something else you just made me think of, and we should have asked Kim this, but I didn't think of it. There's a defining moment, I think, in everyone's life they can look back where they make the decision in their head, I'm leaving. I'm out. I'm going to come up with a plan, because what you just said, you executive, you colleague, you whomever in the leadership role, you just turned me off. You just disrespected me, insulted me. You didn't hear me. So now I'm leaving, and I might just keep taking the paychecks for a while till I figure out what it is I'm going to do. But it happens. And if leaders were aware of how they're coming across, one split second of a judgment, a comment, taking the power away, that can be the light switch that just goes, that's it, I'm out.
Let me share really quickly, because this could be helpful to the people that are watching and listening, a statistic that surprised me. Many resignations occur after an employee is given a bonus. After you've given an employee money as a means of trying to keep them, they have a higher probability of quitting. You're more likely to lose them after that. So
now, why is that, Al?
Because they wanted to leave in the first place. They've always wanted to leave. And what you did with that money was pay them to leave. You've resolved cognitive dissonance. It's a psychological principle. You've resolved a dissonant situation in their minds by paying them enough to say, take this job and shove it, which is what they do. So whenever your incentive in giving people money is to keep them because you believe they're golden handcuffs, trust me when I tell you, nobody likes handcuffs, no matter whether they're gold or tin. Doesn't make any difference. Nobody likes handcuffs. As soon as they perceive that's what it is, they will quit, and you will be amazed. And I've seen it myself several times. It happened to me once. I remember vividly how I felt that day. And I've heard so many stories since then from so many people who've said, I don't understand why they quit. We doubled their salary. And the day after, it was one of those, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I don't want to be here anymore. Seriously. So it isn't money. You may think it is, but it isn't.
It's definitely not. And that's a great share, by the way. Thank you for sharing that statistic. I know for me, and I've said this over and over again, it's about respect. It's about being treated with respect. And when people, and this is a general statement, I'm just saying from my experience, at a certain level, it's like, you're here and I'm here. Okay. And I can control the strings. You're my little puppet, and you get the paycheck and the benefits, and I'm going to control the strings. And at a certain point, no, sorry, I'm cutting those strings and leaving town. And I think on the other side, you can look back and say, okay, what was my role? What was their role? And what am I going to learn from it? And how, as a leader now, what can I learn from those situations so that I don't make those same mistakes?
That's a good, and a whole bunch of other reasons why somebody like Kim Adele can help you. You should reach out. I mean, if you're not sure how to, don't go this alone. Go and get help. And that's one of the reasons why she was such a great guest today.
She also has 4 books that are out. The 5th one's coming out, and I believe you can get them on Amazon. So please do reach out. She knows what she's talking about. And you know what? She's walked the walk, and she's talking the talk. She's been through. She said she almost died. Okay, so she knows what it's like to be maybe one breath away from it all being over. And she's been able to take her experiences and package them so that she can help people turn their lives around. She can help turn organizations around. So please do reach out to her. For people listening on the radio who can't read the banner, her website is kimadelrandall.com. I'm going to spell it for you. Get your pen and paper. Okay. www.kimadelrandall.com, or email her at hello, HELLO, at kimrandall.com.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, Mr. Cini, another fabulous show.
A lot of fun for me, and thanks again for inviting me to tag along.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for our beautiful graphics. I'm just loving this purple color. I don't know about you.
Nice. Okay, they look great. Good work.
All right, thank you again, Kim. Thank you, Al. We'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye now.